I'm making an animated series, and there's 4 new character models, 4 new characters, and 4 questions to answer, like, who else lives in the world of Stormfellers? What do Aetius, Glangor, and Quilver look like in 3D? What's another voice actor on this thing? And why did I have to make this project 3 times harder than it needed to be? Let's catch up, you and me, and you'll probably need these. So what goes into making a 2D character? Hold on, give me those back. This isn't Spy Kids. So what exactly goes into making a 2D character 3D without these, but like with polygons? Well, last time I showed you Biko, who I've given a small texture update to since then, and he looks precisely like this. Now, since the last update, I hired an awesome animator to help out part-time, and one of the things he's helped with is both updating the rigs of the characters to be able to do a lot more things a lot better, like Biko's mouth and face here, but he's also helped organize our file structure, so a change on the character gets carried through all the scene files. It ends up being pretty non-destructive, if you're careful. While I've been getting more and more proficient with Blender's sculpting tools, at the start of this project a few years ago now, I sculpted the main cast of characters in ZBrush. Instead of worrying about polygons and edge loops, you can simply start with very organic clay. Of course, Blender's sculpt mode has caught up quite a bit since then, but there's something to be said about having a long-standing familiarity with a program. Patrons have seen this guy in an earlier version. It's Quilver in the flesh, and barbs. In Blender, simplifying the characters so that they are a fraction of the amount of data that they were in ZBrush makes it way easier for the computer to render and deform them. There's really quite a bit of work put into each of these characters, but I think I mentioned last time that the trade-off is that I'm not redrawing them over and over again every time I want to make them move, like, say, the bulk of the production in something like a 2D traditionally animated film. You know, there was a time when making Stormfellers into an animated series seemed like almost an unrealistic option. My initial announcement was just that I was working on the story and not necessarily the medium that it was in. I could have just as easily tried to tell this story with, say, comics as a safety net, the relatively easy way out, as it were. Instead, 3D animation is like 3 times harder. Not only is there the literal 3D depth and space that each character has to occupy, you're also dealing with sound, motion, and time. The thing is, though, that there was never really a choice. I mean, come on. If I had tried a project like this even a few years ago with the level of experience I had then, it would have been almost completely overwhelming, if not impossible. The key is to build up those skills slowly with smaller projects as stepping stones toward the big kahuna, as it were. That way, I'm at least in some amount of my depth and not completely out of it. Once the character's model takes shape, a complex skeleton is added to deform just the right amount of each character, and each bone is told what it should and shouldn't influence. And hey, look, it's Glangor. Whereas Biko is relatively gelatinous and moves around really softly, kind of like this plant, non-stop through the whole video. Glangor has a lot of rigid plates and exoskeletal limbs. Look at just how amazing this mouth is, how easy it is to animate and express with. I honestly can't get over it. There are a lot of creatures in nature that go through the process of shedding their skin or molting. Think of the noble banana. Despite how uncomfortable, drawn out, or painful it might be, it's a necessary part of growth, and you become a better banana for it. I've been shedding my skin through this process and finding out what matters most, what things to leave behind, and what things I need to be better at. And despite the work being harder, I'm so glad that I didn't take the quote-unquote easy way out with something like a comic. I'm really starting to see animation as a path forward for me, and I can tell because I don't mind doing what's difficult. To make the characters look as much like my illustrations as possible, one of the first steps is to paint texture onto their surface. Here you can see me adding little bits of ambient occlusion and imperfect brush strokes to Aetius, who looks precisely like this. Speaking of rigs, Aetius' hood, braids, and tail can all be controlled and animated really easily, and his mask can flip down to protect his eyes from the draining storms. Quilver's wrist reticles can do the same. Now, while the textures and models are done, there's still work to be done from scene to scene to develop the absolute final look for the pilot. Things like lighting, post-processing, that means that even now, the way that these characters look still isn't final, but I think the look is at least more than halfway there. Getting a character to believably look and move the way you hoped in 3D is no small task, but it's incredibly rewarding. Of course, this is the main cast, but who else occupies the Isle of Storms? Well, I think you've seen Ophelius Pierpont, the quest frog as he's known to the rest of the inhabitants. He works for the Stormfellers Guild and helps organize and inform Stormfellers of things going on around the island. Now, I've tried to be very disciplined with this project and take my own advice on the world building trap of just spewing and establishing all of these people and places and lore, loading down your story with extra weight without actually getting to the real meat of the story until it's too heavy. So while it's obviously good to think about the what and why in this world, and I am padding the surroundings with believable denizens, I'm waiting to finish the pilot before designing and sharing things that would be really overindulgent to do, like other Stormfeller parties. So far, I'm staying strong. I've shared some of the buildings in this world before, and the person behind a lot of them is Chichery, the Thattress. She's a continuation of some of the ideas from beakless birds I drew about a year back, and that style of bird character will definitely be common in the world. There's a lot of thought put into what building materials are used culturally in Stormfellers, and I love the idea that this favorite swooping shape of hers that's seen across the things that she's wearing also shows up in the shapes of her buildings. Now, one thing I've been excited to do as a ADHD person super over ambitiously starting tons of different projects a few years ago is to fold in and repurpose some of those ideas that I've had that previously didn't have a home. You might remember this idea of a conquistador-like explorer keeping a journal of the creatures that he found, like Budvay and Ferglet and Iguana. And the thing is, there's no reason these characters can't be part of Stormfellers. That explorer's name was Cornelius Carlyle, but I don't particularly vibe as much with an idea that emulates the sort of colonizing, hunting archetype, and the world of Stormfellers, there's really no place for it there. The peoples as a whole are both isolated, and they're largely humble and coexisting. So enter Carlyle as he is now. Still a creature chronicler, still traveling the island, but much more understated, and like many people that research animals, he's just much more naturally kinder. I definitely feel a lot more kinship to this character now. I mean, you combine curiosity and drawing, and that pretty much sums me up. There's someone else exploring the island, though, someone much more outgoing than Carlyle. It's Tulston, the Old Salt. This butterfly-like sailor has lost a wing and a leg, but he's still out there gathering tales to tell. The shapes of this character came first, but I really love the juxtaposition of a creature that is typically both fragile and dainty put into this rugged and dangerous lifestyle, and he's still flourishing. It's been a lot of fun sharing these characters and writing a little bit of dialogue for them to deliver about their lore in their own words over on my Instagram reels at BagelDenizen. And if you're interested, maybe I could post them as YouTube shorts. So last time we announced that Quilver will be voiced by himself, which is pretty exciting, if not completely confusing. There's 3 more main cast members to announce though, and so I'll start with what I consider to be the lamest of the 3. It's Glangor, and he will be voiced by me. Maybe a little bit of pitch shifting, but I was satisfied enough with the sound of him in my animatics, and I thought y'all might enjoy me being a part of the pilot audibly, like a lot of show creators end up being. So far, nothing really notable in these announcements, I know, but I really can't wait to share the voices of Biko and Aetius in the next installments. There's some genuine heavy hitters, and I really can't wait. So last time, the Biko plush campaign was just getting started, and thanks to you, we successfully funded it. So sincerely appreciate your support, but if you missed out on the Biko plush, I did grab a few extra, and the weekend of March 25th to 26th, 1, I'll be at Big Apple Comic-Con in New York City, so if you're nearby, come say hi. But 2, if you aren't nearby, we'll run another virtual booth sale where you can grab a Biko plush at brookeseggleston.com/shop that weekend while supplies last, along with a couple of other cool things. Make sure you're on the newsletter at brookeseggleston.com to get a reminder on that. And of course, Biko's backpack has been the place to get a piece of Stormfellers for yourself the last few months. February's has a Tulston foil trading card and Chichery hard enamel pin. You can grab that at patreon.com/BagelDenizen. And if you'd like to design characters of your own, check out my course at learningcharacterdesign.com. But what's next for Stormfellers? Well, there's animation, effects, rendering, and environments to share in the next installment, and if you haven't seen it already, make sure to check out part 1. Thanks for watching, and have fun creating. You can't help it, can you? Just gotta shake the whole video. We're leaving it in.